Australian house prices are absurd, but did you realise just how absurd they are? In other countries, there are castles, yes, literal castles that you can buy for the same price as a mingy dog box in Australia. I'm Biko Konstantinos, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Did you hear about the kidnapping? He woke up. And you'll never want to nap again once you get a load of my content. Either that or you'll want to poke your eyes out. But it's worth a shot, ain't it? So please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll provide analysis and commentary on the big financial stuff that affects your life. And right now, Australia's ridiculous housing market looks like an absolute joke when compared to what you can buy overseas.
We know how obsessed we are in Australia about property prices.
We're so obsessed with keeping property prices ultra high that we're willing to sacrifice an entire generation's dreams and hopes just so property owners can keep making unrealistic and undeserved gains.
Here in France, not so much. Here's why.
Looks crazy nice. Can't wait to see what the asking price is.
2 hours south of Paris, the chateau life awaits. This castle in Aloni, nestled in the French countryside, could have been fit for a king.
Alright, so this is what Aloni looks like. Seems like a nice countryside town in France. If we zoom out, we can see the castle situated down here, around 2 hours drive from Paris.
Now it's fit for an Australian first home buyer. Agent Pierre de Ragnac says $1.4 million will get you the keys to this slice of European luxury.
Sold, baby. Me and my subscribers are already on our way.
The actual asking price is around 861,000 euros, which is approximately 1.4 million Australian dollars.
1.4 million Australian dollars for an actual freaking castle. And what about that sexy accent from Pierre? It is not horrible. But it must be a bit hot over there because Pierre's sweating a bit.
It's unbelievable to think that the prices in Paris are cheaper than if you wanted to buy a place in Parramatta.
Unbelievable is one word. Another word is betrayal. Another word is treason. Another word is we're all getting rich off property, so screw you. Wait. That was more than one word.
Back in Australia, in Cooks Hill, New South Wales, 2 hours north of Sydney, forget the chateau. This must be the
shithole. She means shithole. So Sydney's here and Cook Hill's all the way up here near Newcastle. Close to the water, so it must get a premium for that, but still a very long way from Sydney CBD.
Agent Nick Townsend.
What colour was the house?
It was originally, from what you can see, a nice cream colour.
Looks like the colour of greed. Boomers were able to pick up these sorts of properties for a carton of beer, and once they noticed that the property rose in value more than they could ever earn working at a job, they started hoarding all the properties they could, making house prices rise even faster.
The French chateau dates back to 1850. The Cooks Hill home, not too far behind, built in 1930.
Such a blank canvas that it's perfect.
It's not perfect, son. It's an indication of a failed housing market. When housing is no longer affordable for the average worker, we've failed as a society. Workers are the backbone of this country and pay all the taxes that provide the pension and care to the elderly, who are benefiting for house prices now being out of reach for the average Australian.
The four-level castle spans 425 square metres and sits on 1.4 hectares of parkland.
Most new lots of land available in Australia is around 400 square metres, 300 square metres or even less. So just the square metres of the castle itself is bigger than most Aussie blocks. And 1.4 hectares is 14,000 square metres. So you definitely won't have a house right next to you like most Australian suburbs.
Beautiful place full of history.
Pierre, you're getting more sweaty, my boy. Jump in the pool and then do some cartwheels on the grass. That's what I'd do.
The Aussie block's a little smaller, 328 square metres, and the house is one level.
this house.
Sucks bloody balls. But it's still going to get a ridiculous artificially inflated price because that's the Australian way.
The French chateau has 7 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and a library.
That one library is probably actually bigger than the living spaces of many young Australians. And that's because they're forced into shared accommodation because rent prices have been allowed to surge due to record mass immigration causing the worst vacancy rental rates in history.
And if that's not enough, it also has a basement bar.
Come on. Now you're just taking the piss.
Outside, you get a long driveway, a swimming pool, a horse statue, trees, and flowers.
It really does look incredible, and it breaks your heart to see what 1.4 million, a massive amount of money, gets you in most Australian capital cities.
The Aussie has 2 bedrooms and a vintage kitchen and bathroom ready for revival.
Along with a side of respiratory disease.
Needs a little bit of work.
A little bit of work, but the good thing is it's got all the plumbing intact.
The only good thing about this property is that it will most likely keep making ridiculous house price gains due to Australian policies that purposely manufacture ridiculous demand for housing. I mean, Sydney's not the second most expensive housing market in the entire world because its land is any better than the land in France. It's because house prices over the last 30 years have gone up exponentially. So everyone's desperate to get into the market at any cost, just in the hope they'll keep making those massively oversized housing gains. There's religious people in France and there's religious people in Australia, but the biggest religion in Australia nowadays seems to be the religion of property.
At the castle, you can sip champagne and eat snails by the pool.
And in Australia, you can sip on your own tears as you mortgage your life away for an uninhabitable piece of crap.
How much are you asking for this property?
So our price guide is 1.4 to 1.5.
Well, $1.4 million is a lot of money, but unfortunately it doesn't buy you much in Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane or any of the major capitals.
It's actually a crap load of money. If you were lucky enough to save up a 20% deposit, you'd need over $300,000 for the deposit plus stamp duty. So if you got a property for around 1.4 million, taking off the deposit, you're left with a mortgage around 1.15 million. Now that amount of mortgage at an interest rate around 6.3% on a 25-year mortgage gives you monthly repayments around $7,600 per month. That's a cool 90 grand per year. How much income do you think you'll need to make to be able to afford 90 grand mortgage repayments per year? It's a crap load. But considering the owner of that property probably bought when the house was only 3 to 4 times their average income, they're literally laughing all the way to the bank. And what's more, all those capital gains are completely tax-free for a homeowner. But those at the top of this Australian housing Ponzi need newcomers to keep bidding up prices so they can end their days in luxury.
In 2016, property expert Robert Clarick went viral when he pointed out that Milan offered better property value than Milpera.
Milpera is in Canterbury, Bankstown, 24 kilometres west of Sydney CBD, and is probably known as a bit of a rough area.
There's no rhyme or reasoning for what's going on.
Yes, there is actually. The Australian housing market has been intentionally inflated to create economic growth because when people's house prices go up, they feel wealthier and tend to spend more in the economy. Just look at COVID if you want a clear example. All steps were taken to protect Australia's housing market. And not only was it protected, rocket fuel was put under house prices, sending them surging over 50% in most capital cities in just a few years. But the trouble with this strategy is that over time it creates a two-class system between the property haves and the property have-nots, where those who own property are thriving financially, but those who don't are being pushed towards poverty. And when Australians work hard and still can't afford their own home, we've royally screwed up, in my opinion.
Rob, do you have clients now considering moving overseas and retiring there?
In the last 5 years, a lot of my clients have now decided that they will not retire in Australia because it's actually cheaper to retire in places like Italy, France, Spain.
A stack of people in my video comments have either moved overseas or are thinking about moving overseas due to the ridiculous housing costs in Australia. It's an absolute betrayal of Australian citizens, and what are policymakers doing about it? I'm Biko Konstantinos.